Hello and welcome to 14.3 Session Plan, Session and Programme Reviews by Jacob Buttifant. Here we have the specific session aims. They were to help the client understand which muscles the weights train and why they were specific. Because my client is a basketballer, I've chosen to exercise specific muscles that he'll use when playing. I can explain to the client what muscles he uses when he's playing so that he understands that strengthening them will benefit him. Once I've told the client about the specific muscles, he can use this information to develop them himself. Another session-specific aim is to teach the client about muscular endurance and why it's so specific to a basketballer. It's important because lots of muscles are repeatedly contracted when playing, so to strengthen them means that he can play for longer without fatigue. I can then explain what sort of sets and reps deliver the best exercise for muscular endurance. Low sets but high reps work best, meaning the muscles are worked out for longer. Next, I made a risk assessment to ensure the safety of my client and myself. Then I made a PAR-Q to ensure my client was fit and healthy enough to go through with my programme. Here we have my client's heart rate, target heart rate zone, which is specific to muscular endurance, blood pressure, peak flow test results, and his BMI, along with the averages for his age across the bottom. Now we move on to my session content. First, the facilities and resources. The location was in the sports hall. The facilities that I needed was only a quarter of the sports hall floor. Resources that I needed, free weights, resistant bands and a bench. Healthy considerations, the free weights need to be used appropriately and the clients need a brief understanding of how to use them before starting the activity. Any tripping hazards need to be put away before warming up and starting the activity. Any jewellery needs to be removed before starting the activity so to avoid serious injury. The emergency procedures and contingency plan. If any injuries occur, I will alert the closest first aider, which would be Lindsay Taverner. If the injury needs more than a first aider, then I can use the PE officer's phone to ring reception to make them aware, and an ambulance can be called. If the fire alarm rings, then the protocol is to go to the assembly point on the netball court, a minute's walk from the sports hall. Students should exit through the fire exits guided by myself. If someone is injured and the first aider is not there to be alerted or is delayed somehow, I will assess them myself. I will remove any dangers that could harm myself or the client. I can then speak to the client to see where the injury is. I can make them comfortable until the first aider is there. If I'm not able to use the free weights or I have too many participants to each to use a weight, we can use body weight exercises to achieve a similar goal. If the sports hall is not available, then I'm able to use the sports cafe upstairs if that's available. Issues arising from the risk assessment. I know I will have other sports users in the hall, and so being aware of them will be important in not causing greater injury. Also, the free weights, if used inappropriately, can cause serious injury, and so the client or participants will need to be taught how to use them properly. Then we have the warm-up, an introduction before the warm-up. I will introduce myself and ask them how their day might be going. Some small talk may follow. This is just to reassure the client that I'm a relaxed person who cares about how they are and how their well-being is. I'll also need to check that they have no injuries that I need to be aware of before starting the exercise. I'll make sure to ask them twice and ask if they're 100% sure, as this could mean the results we collect could be incorrect and therefore invalid. I will make sure I'm relaxed and happy, as this instills confidence into my client. Throughout the exercise, I will be confident and motivate my client to help them to achieve the best of their ability. Now onto the warm-up. I will first explain to my client that they should prepare themselves for a warm-up and then explain that I will include. I'll explain that we'll start with a very light jog to the other side of the hall and then back. I'll remind them that this just warms up the muscles we'll be using and slightly increases the heart rate. I'll then let him know some dynamic stretches will follow. These stretches will focus on the muscles they'll be using in the session. We will start with a couple of hamstring curls, walking across the hall with a few steps in between each one, followed by some groin stretches, opening and closing the gate. We'll come to a stop and begin some of the stretches focusing on the arm muscles. The first stretch will be a tricep stretch. One arm comes over the top of the head and the other arm gently pushes on top of the elbow to stretch the triceps. We'll do this in both arms. The second arm stretch will be a bicep and tricep combination stretch. One arm comes across the chest and the other arm acts as a lock, stretching both sets of muscles at the same time. Once one arm feels stretched, then swap to the other arm. Once my client feels stretched and warm, we'll take part in a fun little exercise to really kickstart our session. This activity uses a resistance band and a small area of space. The large resistance band goes around the client and they are asked to run in the shape of a square, running as hard as they can to reach the corners of the square. At the other end of the resistance band, I will be stood holding the band, creating the resistance. It's an exciting exercise and is fun for both the client and personal trainer, whilst increasing heart rate. Now onto the main content. Activities or drills. Once my client is warm and prepared for the session, I will briefly explain what type of session I have planned and what activities we will be doing. I will explain the aim of the session is to improve their muscular endurance through weight training and using different sets, weights and reps to deliver a different outcome. The first activity is bicep curls. Next up will be some tricep dips, then a plank, sit-ups and lateral raises. I'll explain how to complete each drill and the safety cautions that surround each one. I'll also explain to my client how each drill exercises and improves the muscles that will be specific to their sport, as that is the most important factor. Each weight drill will last about 4 minutes with periods of rest in between each set. Whilst my client is doing the drill, I will ensure to motivate where I need to and ensure the correct technique is being displayed for maximum progress. If my client is finding the drills too easy and I expected too little of them, then I can increase sets, reps and weights to help with my progression of my client. Alternatively, if it's too hard, then I can decrease them. Bicep curls. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart with the correct weight in each hand. Here I've chosen a 5 kg weight for my client. Start the weight by your side. When ready to pull the weight upwards, pull the weight upwards, creating flexion at the joint. The elbows should be either locked into the hip or the client's elbows should be stationary. They should not move around. 10 reps, 3 sets with a 10-second rest in between each one. Tricep dips. The client will have their hands on the edge of the bench with their fingers facing their legs, which will be extended outwards from the bench. When ready, my client will lower their body weight so that their backside is just off the ground. Then using their triceps, push up off the bench to the starting position. This is 1 rep. It's important that the client's fingers are facing their leg, as this is how to correctly work out the tricep muscle. 10 reps, 3 sets with a 10-second rest in between each one. The plank. I will have a mat set up for my client so it's more comfortable. The client will lie flat on their stomach with their arms and elbows flat on the mat. When I say up, they must push up off their elbows so their stomach is just off the surface. Their toes and feet should also balance them at the other end. It's important to remind the client that their back and backside should be flat, so to exercise the abdominals correctly. It's a 1-minute plank followed by 10 seconds rest. Repeat this 3 times. Sit-ups. Sit-ups are also done on the mat. The client should lay on their back with their hands on the side of their head. I will be stood on the client's feet. When I say up, the client should sit upwards using their abdominal muscles. It's important that the client's hands remain on the side of their head. This removes the temptation from using them for balance. 10 reps, 3 sets, 20 seconds of rest in between each one of the reps. Finally, some lateral raises. The lateral raises, I've used a 5 kilogram weight to help build muscle in the biceps and triceps. The client will stand with their feet shoulder width apart with the weight by their pockets. When we begin, the client will lift the weight laterally along the side of the latissimus dorsi. Here it's important to keep the elbow and arm as straight as possible, as this creates a better lift and therefore working the muscles better. 10 reps, 3 sets with a 20-second rest in between them. Finally, the cool down. For the cool down, it's important for my client to stretch out as much as they can, as they will have just endured a challenging muscular endurance session. This session will be testing their muscles' strength and endurance. The muscles just used may feel sore, lethargic and heavy. So first we'll use a walk around our working space to reduce heart rate and breathing rate. During the walk, I can ask questions about the session such as, did you enjoy the session? Did you learn anything new? These questions help with my feedback, but also help to create a bond with my client. Once our walk around is done, we'll start stretching to release the lactic acid that might have built up. First, use the resistance bands to stretch the triceps and biceps. I will hold the band behind the client and the other end around the palm of my client. The client will push the band forwards and backwards around 8 to 10 times on both arms. Then a tricep stretch, one arm comes over the top of the head and the other arm gently pushes on top of the elbow to stretch the triceps. The second arm stretch will be a bicep and tricep combination stretch. One arm comes across the chest and the other arm acts as a lock, stretching both sets of muscles at the same time. Once the stretches are complete, we will have a Q&A session. I can ask questions about whether they think they made progress or not, whether they enjoyed the session or not. I can also praise them on what they did well in a session and give some constructive criticism on what to work on next time. Finally, ending the session. Once my client has finished the cool down and I'm happy that they have stretched enough, I'll ask them to help me clear away the equipment. I will make sure that I put away the weights, as this could be a dangerous task if done correctly or by someone who doesn't know where they go. I will make sure my client has got their belongings and show them out. I might praise them on their progress in the session as a final piece of feedback. Here is some evidence of me and my client going through the warm-ups, the main activity and the cool-down. After my client finished my session, I got some feedback. He explained some positives and some negatives. Firstly, some positives from my client. He explained that overall it was a good session. He said that it was quite creative with the warm-up. Lewis said that I told him how each exercise was relevant to his sport before he took part in that exercise. This enabled Lewis to understand what every aspect of the workout was trying to achieve. He explained that the workout was intense but not too intense that he felt as though he couldn't do it, explaining that it was challenging but not too challenging that he felt it was impossible. Lewis said that I worked well to adapt my session after we found out that Lewis had a foot injury. That would have enabled him to not being able to complete my session that I'd previously planned out. I also got some negatives. He explained that the cool down was too simple and it could have targeted his sport a little bit more. He said maybe by adding a basketball to it. I also got some peer observer feedback, so some positives. He also explained that overall it was a good workout for the client and that I had adapted well to the client's injury. He said that I'd included dynamic stretches as well as static stretches that were already there. He also explained that how I explained each task would benefit the client's sport and what types of muscle it would be working. He also explained some negatives. The cool down was a bit too basic as it was repeating the warm up that he did without linking it to the client's sport. He also explained that I could have done with another pulse raiser in the warm up. I then gathered some of my strengths and areas for development regarding my session. I've named some strengths. I think that I was clear with my instructions and demonstrations to help the client to understand how each exercise might benefit them. I also told my client how each exercise would benefit them and how it would benefit the sport that they played. I also told the client how the low weight, high rep would help benefit muscular endurance. I also had some areas for improvement. I thought that my warm-up was far too basic. I needed to develop some more engaging warm-up drills. I also thought my cool-down, as noted by my peer observer and client, was a bit too basic and boring, and it could have been a bit more specific to my sport. His sport. Here I then reviewed my program aims. The short-term exercise goal was muscular endurance. This is specific to basketballers as they continually contract their muscles throughout a game when shooting, dribbling, passing and dodging opponents. So as to improve this would mean that my client could play longer without fatiguing as quickly. My client's long-term goal was cardiovascular endurance. This is specific as basketballers run up and down the court repeatedly for long periods. Improving this would ensure he could run longer without fatiguing as quickly. Finally, I made some strengths and areas to improve for the whole of my program. Firstly, some strengths. I think I specifically targeted their goals. I knew what exercises could have been moulded around the goals. The activities were specific to the client's sport, I think, and I think I helped them to develop what they needed to work on. I think I clearly explained the repetitions, the sets, why they were used, how they were used, what the benefits that came from them. And I think I really targeted the client's goals here. We also had some areas for improvement. I think with the drills, I think there should have been a bit of a stagger in them so he could understand them and then improve from one drill to the next. I think the client understanding the drill and then improving on it and understanding why this drill improves his sport is really important. I think that's one thing that I could have picked up on. Also, I think next time, if I had to do it again, I'd find some more creative warm-ups for my client. This just helps them engage with the activity, and it also brings a bit of enjoyment into the drill. So I've come to the end of my PowerPoint. Thanks very much for listening.